Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest episode in the Highmetric's Tech Byte series. I'm Derek Byrne, a senior consultant here at Highmetric, and today I'm going to talk about one of the new features in software asset management within Orlando, namely engineering applications. Now, before I go into a full-on demo, I just wanted to spend a minute or two detailing the journey that ServiceNow has gone through with software asset management, and then go into some of the reasons why engineering applications is such an important addition to the software asset management module within ServiceNow. As you can see from the slide here, ServiceNow really started this journey in their Jakarta release back in 2017. It's where they really start to dip their toe into the software asset management world. And you can see from there it was really focused around sort of like the main headaches that people have around Microsoft and Oracle licensing. And then over the years, several releases, as you can see on the screen, and using a combination of module development and acquisition, ServiceNow has got to where they are today with the Orlando release. Now, as you can see from the slide there, there's a lot of new innovation in the Orlando release. We're not going to go through all of that today. What I really wanted to focus on was the engineering applications. Now, you may ask, why would we focus just on those when there's so many great new innovations within Orlando? Well, over the years, I've worked with many organisations who use engineering applications, and this is one of those areas when we start to do software asset management that often gets overlooked, mainly because there's no single vendor that looks after the traditional office applications and the engineering applications. But when you look at engineering applications, they're often some of the most expensive applications that an organisation can buy, often costing tens of thousands of pounds per user. So it's a bit of a no-brainer as to why we wouldn't focus on this and the potential savings on license expenditure. So let's dive into the detail. And in order to get all this working, there's some prerequisites. So the first one is that you need to own the ServiceNow Software Asset Management Professional license. Secondly, you need a source of data about the engineering applications. Now, for this purpose, ServiceNow have partnered with OpenLM as the market leader in this particular space. And then finally, you need the OpenLM integration adapter, which is available free of charge from the ServiceNow store. And then once you have all those prerequisites in place, then you can start to take advantage of the new engineering application functionality in Orlando. So let's take a look at what that actually looks like in the product. So let's start off with the new engineering license overview dashboard, as you can see on the screen in front of you. And those of you who've got a little bit of experience with ServiceNow probably recognize this as a performance analytics dashboard. So that's part of the software asset management professional license. And you can see that the dashboard details a number of different items, such as the current spend on engineering applications, the potential savings. We're going to drill into that in a little bit more detail in a second. And then some other areas looking at the used engineering applications, top active users, idle users, and then detailing applications and users who've been denied access because there's no concurrent licenses left. We'll drill into those in a little bit more detail in a second. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to spend a little bit more time on the potential savings, so let's do that now. So let's come over, click on potential savings, and start at the beginning of our time frame. So what we're seeing here is at the beginning of the time frame that we're monitoring here, it's saying that there was a potential cost saving of around $18,000 on engineering applications, and that was at the end of April, beginning of May. Now, with such a low number, and some of you may think that 18,000 is quite a lot of money, but when it comes to engineering apps, as I mentioned, some of those can be tens of thousands of pounds per year per user. So 18,000, not that big a number when it comes to engineering apps, but there's a saving there anyway. Most likely it was a user who left their session logged on overnight when they left for work. So it was an idle state, but we could still investigate it. What I'm really interested, though, to be honest, is this big spike the week later, where we go from 18,000 to 135,000. What was it that generated that? So let's go and have a look at that. So let's go and show our records. Now behind that there are a number of removal candidates that make up that amount of money. So let's go click on one of those. And of course all this data is coming from the OpenLM integration that we talked about. So that is monitoring the usage of all those concurrent and engineering applications and highlighting when they're not being used, when someone's not logging onto them or just being idle with it, and it reflects in this data here. And what we can see here is that the justification for this is, as you said before, low usage, and it's saying that there are a number of rights for ArcGIS 3D analysts that are installed on a server but just not being used, and we could reclaim those due to the low usage. Now of course, this being ServiceNow, we can kick a workflow off. So we could do things like reclaim. So we've got a button up there to reclaim, and that could kick off an automatic action to physically remove that software from that machine, therefore reclaiming it, therefore giving it to someone else who uses it. And I'll talk about repurposing licenses in a second. But of course we could kick off all sorts of different workflows, such as notifying the particular users who are using that to see if they're going to need it in a couple of weeks for another project. Could be that they're actually on holiday at the moment, that's the reason for the low usage, or that they're just in downtime in between projects. So it'd be useful to have some other workflow there as well. Now I mentioned there about repurposing licenses for other users. Let's spend a little bit of time talking about that. Now as I mentioned before, there are a number of other reporting components here. Some of them being the denied products and denied users. And what's happening here is that the integration with OpenLM is telling us that 3 users here, George, David and Rachel, tried to log on to one of those concurrent engineering applications but were denied access because there was no licenses available. Now if we combine that with the potential savings piece that we just looked at, if we could free up some of those licenses that aren't being used, we could make sure that these particular users here always have access when they need it. And just to reinforce that use case around repurposing licenses a little bit more, let me just focus on one of the other dashboards that we've got on here. This is about top idle users. I'm just going to pick on one of my users here who's been flagged up as an idle user. So someone who has the application, uses it occasionally but not very effectively. And what you can see here is, obviously we talk about the product themselves, the usage dates, the total session duration, but how much of that session was idle, so the application was open but wasn't actively being used. The numbers here don't look too bad, but if this was a user who was opening up the application and you know, for an hour and only using it for 3 minutes, is there a use case there for removing that license? Does that user really need that application? So resolving the issue of denied access to engineering applications isn't always as easy as removing access for an inactive user and giving it to an active user. There are other things to consider. Now if you're a global organization and you have time zone crossovers where, for instance, one office crossovers with another one so that your usage peaks for about an hour and then it drops off as one office closes, maybe that's one of the reasons. So there are a number of dashboard components that help us try and resolve those sort of issues. Now you'll see in the bottom right there is a product usage by location. It's a map in this case. So for all of the various different office locations we've got, we can see the usage for each of those, and we can drill into that and get a much better idea about usage in that location, when and where. But we also have a couple of other tabs here that are going to help us. So we have a license usage summary that shows us the usage over a particular date, whether it peaks and troughs, and we can go into a lot more granular detail down to kind of like the hourly level as well for those different locations. But we can also break that down into the denials. So for the various applications and the regions that were denied, what's the breakdown for that data? So here in the middle we can see that over time, but then we can also see it by product and by location in terms of the license server that was involved. This comes back to the OpenLM integration and the fact that you would have regional OpenLM license servers, and that way you could break it down in terms of when your peak performance is for various different locations. So let's just do a quick review of what we've just seen in the presentation so far. So we looked at the prerequisites for managing engineering application licenses. We looked at the out-of-the-box dashboards that come with the new engineering application functionality within ServiceNow. We looked at using those dashboards to find potential savings. We also took that a little further and started to look at some of the dashboard components that will help us understand license demand by region and application. Now, of course, these tech bites are only supposed to be 8 to 10 minutes of giving you a very high-level overview of some of the new functionality. It's never going to cover everything. So to that end, if you've got any more questions about how this works, you can contact us in a number of different ways. So you can use the email function there you see, so just email us at hello@highmetric.com and ask your questions. You can find us at LinkedIn and ask questions that way. And of course, if you just want to have a rerun of either this tech bite or see any other tech bites in our series, you can go and look us up on our YouTube video. And of course, if you want to understand a little bit more about who Highmetric are as an organization, our website address is there. So finally, I just want to say thank you for sitting in on this episode of Tech Bites, and we hope to see you on the next episode very soon. Thank you very much.